day. And so we'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll have you guys share yours and then go over MOUs, take a little break, and then Michelle will be ready to share financials at around 1 this afternoon. All right, I will turn it to Hannah and Brian.
Having not done a virtual session, what's the virtual analog of everybody walking around and handing out papers? How does that happen virtually?
How do we all get copies of it?
Yeah.
So Hannah will share it on screen, and then Hannah, did you already send it to HCU, or then we'll send out an email so then people will have it? Lunch and break periods. All right, ready to roll. Nice to see everybody. It is unfortunate that we're back in virtual instead of in person. Was enjoying the in-person, but we'll make the best of it. So I think one of the hardest things to do when we're in Zoom is still have kind of the thorough conversation about stuff, but please feel free to chime in, both my team and HCU team, and have good discussion and everything. There was only one issue in Article 9, lunch and break periods, and we've proposed back to you current contract language. You had proposed the time and a half when people have given up their lunch break because they needed to work. And I want to share with you kind of our thinking behind that, because this actually prompted a great deal of conversation on our team. And it left us a little bit uneasy in the sense that, you know, it's one thing, we think it's one thing for our, if a supervisor is having somebody shift the lunch, like, hey, we've got something going on right now, so you need to wait 15 minutes and then take your lunch break. It's an altogether different thing to flat out not give somebody a lunch break during the day. And I think our commitment is that not happen almost ever. Can we say that it would never happen? I suppose you could have so much going on or some emergency circumstance where that may not be possible, but we really want that to be the exception. I think part of our concern is if we have what feels like an enhancement, you know, hey, people get this time and a half if you have them work through their lunch, it almost feels like that justifies doing so. That supervisors would feel like, well, that's kind of fair. You know, at least they're getting time and a half, so it's okay to have them not get a lunch break today. And that to us is not where we want to go. And honestly, sometimes what we have a bigger problem with is people feeling like they need to work, even though they haven't necessarily been directed to. Like, I've got so much to do, I'm just going to work through my lunch. And again, we don't want that to be the go-to. Boley tells us lunch breaks and rest breaks, and we really want people to take them. And so I was going to have some of our site supervisors talk a little bit about what their experience is and how they operate in their building on that lunch break piece, especially. So I don't know, Justin, if maybe you could start, but then I'd also like to hear from Yolanda and Jeanette if possible.
Sure. I 100% agree. We need to take care of ourselves and each other, and our priority is to ensure people have the breaks they're entitled to and need. And so we want to make it very clear that we need to do whatever it takes to give those breaks. Things that I've done is I have run the office at both sites that I've been at in Hillsborough, just to say, you're on lunch, make sure it happens. Sending people to cover. We just don't want to have that almost as a fallback. I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to pay you, because ultimately we care about mental health and physical health. And we need to just say, we are taking lunches and breaks. If we have to shift, we'll shift. Let's collaborate on that. But we make sure lunches happen. Yeah, I'll step in myself.
I would agree with that. I think I always believe that it's important for lunches and breaks to happen and occur, but I think just being a part of this process and having these conversations and knowing that sometimes, I will have employees that, feel like they can't go away. But what I've been changing my practices, even based on our conversations, where I will go and stand at somebody's desk and say, okay, time to go to lunch, And I will stand there until they leave. And then the person who's going to cover for them can step in and cover for them. And I've had conversations with some of my SCA staff members who, are maybe working one-on-one with a student. And right now, I think it's even more important that we're doing this right now with our COVID pandemic lifestyle that we're living. But it's so much more important now that people have a break, that they have lunch, because from a building level, I don't want to lose anybody that I already have here. And so I have told, staff members recently, they're like, oh, no, we're short, we're short in staff. I don't worry about it, but I'm telling them I'm sending somebody to cover you from this time to this time. So, and I'm definitely trying to be more, forceful about it, because I really want people to take breaks and take care of themselves, because I don't want to lose them. And so I think that having those breaks during the day, especially with the mindfulness training that I've been doing, it's helpful and it's necessary.
I wanted to say that Jeanette's having some technical difficulties. She keeps getting kicked out of Zoom. So please don't take her going in and out as a different message. But I know she wanted to try to chat, but I think she's having some difficulty, Brian.
Sure. Yeah. So again, I mean, you could say, well, if you guys are so committed to it never happening, what is it? Doesn't it make sense to still say if it does, then there's 1.5 times pay. And again, I think our fear with that is creating what at least appears to be some sense of normalcy to it, or that there is, it's okay to do it because there's some level of enhanced compensation for it. I mean, one of the things that we do is try and educate our administrators and have contract language that helps promote good practices for them. And so it's a little bit of self-defense, quite honestly, that, if we have that as the trade-off, will it become more common or more the norm? I think our preference would be to hear about it if people are being asked to not shift their lunch, but just not even take one during the day. I think HR would like to hear about that, because that should happen very, very rarely. So that's why what you're seeing from us is just a current contract language proposal there.
Okay, well, we'll discuss it in caucus. I mean, I know it's a concern and it seems like it's been happening more. I know that, I don't even know if now is, now seems like more of the new normal, but we can discuss it as a group and decide how to respond.
Okay, sounds good.
Unless any of my team has anything more to add.
I have a question about this, actually. So we're talking about skipping breaks and delaying breaks, like those are two separate issues. So what amount of shifting a break would your team deem reasonable, or was that something that you discussed?
That's a good question. We didn't really discuss, I guess whenever our conversations happen, it's usually been in terms of like the 15 minutes or a half an hour as far as being shifting a lunch break. That's how I tend to think of it. If you work a shift that starts at 8 and ends at 4, and you're being asked to shift your lunch till 2 o'clock, that's not really shifting a lunch all that much. You've kind of not taken a lunch. You've got an extra long break in the afternoon, basically. So I don't know, Justin, Yolanda, like, do you have times where you guys have to adjust, have people hold off on taking a lunch during the day? And what does that typically look like for you?
When this does come up, I often ask when will you be able to get free, or give a suggestion. In the elementary setting, we worked a little more collaboratively. With the larger school, we're able to actually cover, and it's not so much of a time of shift. It's like we'll figure out a way to cover it. But in elementary, we didn't have the personnel to cover it as well. So I would just work with typically my office staff on just making it happen. whatever they prefer. Sometimes they're like, you know what, I'll be able to go in 30 minutes after I get attendance done. Totally reasonable, things like that. So it was sort of case by case.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that was my thought, that really shifting a lunch is within an hour, or you not really shifted a lunch as much as eliminated it. So, section E talks about interrupting lunch. It doesn't really talk about shifting it. I don't know how often, somebody's lunch starts, and then that seems like probably a fairly rare circumstance as well. But anyway, that's what I think of it, that we're going to try and put lunch in as close to the middle of a shift as we typically can. And that if we're going to shift it, it should be within a fairly tight window. Other questions on that one? Okay, thanks. It does help to have the issue brought up, because it does, I think, renew some conversation on our team and say, where do we need to double back, making sure we're enforcing good practices.
Yeah, I have a question. That's what I was going to speak on too, is like we have a select few here that are on the bargain team that know of this situation and stuff, but I think that's the problem, is the communication with some of the other, admin. I think it needs to get well communicated that, that exactly what the expectations are, because some of them do their own rules, and maybe you guys don't on here, but there are ones that do. And that's who we're speaking about right now. I mean, that's where our problem, where the problem lies. So just throwing that out there.
I do understand where you're coming from on that, Debbie. And it's funny because I asked Justin if he can talk, and he said, well, I can talk about what happens in my building. I can't, vouch for what happens in some other building. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, all you can really do is speak for yourself. So it does, it does highlight for us, like, we leave these bargains with kind of an unofficial list of, here are some things that we need to reinforce for admin. Here's where we may have some slippage, in the system, especially during a period of time like we've been in, where things have been hectic and people are pretty frazzled. So it helps to have some highlights on areas of the contract that we take for granted a lot of times. Breaks and lunch and break periods pretty well ingrained in wage and hour law and the contract and so forth. Like, well, there can't be much confusion on those, but I think this has been helpful to let us know where we have an issue we need to.
So, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to think we understand that the system can't be built on rock stars and overachievers. The system has to be built so that everyone can follow it.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you, Hannah, can you put up Article 2? Awesome, thank you. So Article 2, we've been kind of working on here or there. It's our definitions. And last time we gave you a proposal that went along with the discipline article. And I think there was some discussion about whether or not a program of assistance definition also needed to be included. And so Saide, do you want to talk about this one? Saide has authored this for us, so I'm going to let her speak to section J.
Of course. So what we've drafted is a very simple but concise definition of the essential aspects of a program of assistance. So it's a formal process, because we have informal processes in place where supervisors work with their staff on improving areas, definitely during probationary period, but also outside of probation. So once the same sort of areas have not been met within an evaluation, is when we would turn to a formalized program of assistance. So it's a formal process, basically documenting areas of deficiency, also expectation and supports for employees who do not meet the performance standards in one or more domains on their evaluation. So an evaluation is made up of 4 domains. And so if they are not meeting and they receive a does not meet in one of those domains, and it's been something that a supervisor has worked with their staff member on, and it's still not, they're still not seeing an employee reach those expectations, then we would move to something formal. So the supervisor meets with the employee, their union rep, periodically, ongoing, for 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, with a list of expectations and all of the supports that the employee needs to be able to meet those expectations. It's all performance-based.
I guess the question I have off the bat is, I mean, obviously, like, program of assistance are sort of tied to discipline, but it doesn't really mention anything about discipline here. Like what are your guys' thoughts about how to sort of like define how this ties into discipline?
In the actual program of assistance. So the end goal of a program of assistance is to improve performance. And so we take this route because we see that there is a need for supports. We see an area of improvement and a need for supports, and we want to provide as much support as possible so the employee can overcome those areas and continue employment. But at the very end of a program of assistance, in the actual document, it does state that if for some reason the program is not completed and successful, even after potentially an extension of the program with additional supports. And mind you, these supports are not only supports that are dictated by the supervisor, but these are the supports that the employee themselves are requesting. So if they're not met, then at that point, there is a potential for termination.
And I know that does get confusing at times, you know, and we talk a lot about going down the right track when we're dealing with an employee situation. Is it performance? And we're going to go down that performance track, which has informal components to it, you know, identification of deficiencies, et cetera, plan of assistance. And then if it's conduct, we're going down that progressive discipline track, letter of directive, letter of reprimand, et cetera. They meet at the same place at the end potentially, right? I mean, because they kind of come, discipline could be the end of either one of those tracks, which makes a program of assistance feel potentially disciplinary. We see it as part of the evaluation process and not part of the discipline process, of course. And I think the article itself identifies program of assistance as non-disciplinary. We could identify it as such in this definition. We could say it's a non-disciplinary formal process, or a component of the evaluation process or something like that. We could add a sentence onto the end of this that was specific to the fact that it's not considered part of progressive discipline or part of our discipline process. So if the group wanted to more explicitly call that out in the definitions, I think we could.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably make sense. And yeah, no, I recognize that it says, it spells it out in the discipline article.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the interesting thing about Article 2 is that, we have a counter for this too. So these proposals are kind of like two ships in the night. I mean, we could also talk about it as a team in a caucus and decide if we want to maybe add this to our counter, if that would make sense. And we could, draft something, but it's kind of up to my team too.
Okay. Yeah, I think, we're open to suggestions on this, trying to get the clearest definition possible. I think this is a good starting point, and we're happy to take a look at things if you wanted to tinker with it some.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand how it's tied to evaluation. I understand that it's not disciplinary per se, but it also certainly can be kind of the bedrock of discipline that might happen if, you know, if the program wasn't followed.
Yeah.
I know it's, you know, a lot of these things are fairly hard to define.
Yep, I agreed. Any other questions, comments on Article 2? The rest of the definitions that you see there are what we proposed to you last time.
Does my team have any questions? I don't see any.
Okay. Moving on, Article 11. Article 11, I think we've been primarily dealing with, we've got another place where there's change, but really we've been talking about section A2, getting rid of on-point community credit union, which makes sense, pretty specific. And I'm going to let Michelle chime in, but I think what we've landed on here is, I think that was your language, a financial institution, as long as it's part of the electronic funds transfer system. I think that was yours originally. I think our ad is with a maximum of 2. So I think Michelle's talked about the fact that with electronic banking, it's a lot easier for folks to move cash around or money around. You know, back in the day when I think this on-point community credit union was originally added, I don't think people had those capabilities the way they do now. So much more, I think, important or to have this ability to have money directed straight from your employer to a particular source. Now it's a little bit easier to move those funds. So I think we're on board with, you know, having one, you know, your direct deposit gets sent to place X, and there might be a separate financial institution that you want a direct deposit or a deduction going to, but from a workability standpoint in payroll, we'd like to keep that to 2. And we're already, you know, halfway through the year, so we'd like this to start July 1, 2022, so that we're not kind of at right now in the year scrambling to make a bunch of changes in payroll. I think that'd be a little bit problematic. Michelle, anything else you want to say on this as far as logic behind our proposal?
And Michelle's not here. She has to be in a state treasury meeting until noon. And so I think she just wants to be able to make sure that this goes into effect next year, just because of all of the payroll details that are connected with it.
Gotcha. Thanks, Connor. Hard to see the exhaustive list of who's here or not here, because you only get the select handful on the right-hand side of the screen there. So
it comes into effect the next fiscal year, right? July 1st, 2022 is what you guys are proposing.
That would be our proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know the process. Michelle could speak better about the process where people indicate where they want deductions to go and how that's set up. I don't know if that's a yearly thing or if that's, you know, how people go about doing that. But again, my recollection from hearing from her is not wanting to make some midstream changes, you know, until we set out with that new fiscal year.
Okay, great.
I have a question here.
Uh-huh.
So in accordance with practices set forth by the payroll department, are these practices that are already in place for direct deposit, or are these practices that they're going to create around this situation?
No, I think that when we talked about that, I mean, there are some nuts and bolts about how you go about identifying, you know, how you want deductions made or where you want them sent. And those are already in place. And so I think we were wanting to make it clear that people would need to follow those in order to identify the financial institution and set up that deduction.
Okay, so it's already the form that we fill out for direct deposit. It's already in place. It's not something, okay. I just want to make sure that if we agree to this language, that we're not agreeing to something that's not there and we're agreeing to whatever comes up in the future.
Connor, am I forgetting anything on that point?
You know, no, I don't think you are. I think if there is going to be a change, one thing that I've always appreciated about payroll is they try to get out the information if there are adjustments that have to happen, because sometimes there are things. I don't want to speak for Michelle, but I believe Brian is correct in saying that we have a process in place and
Mhm.
we'd use that. And if there was something different that was going to happen, then we would surely, let staff know what that would look like before they would make an agreement to have that deduction.
Okay, so maybe we could check with Michelle to see what that process is, just so we're clear.
Sure.
Because before we TA or agree on this, I don't want our members to have to jump through 10 hoops in order to set this up and make it such a process that nobody will take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see those.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Sounds like Michelle will be here at noon anyway, so we can circle back with her on, if I forget, just remind me, we'll circle back with her on this one, just to make sure I'm not forgetting something.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you.
That'd be great.
Other questions on this one? All right,
so.
moving on. Article 13. You had a handful of proposals on holidays. I think we've accepted some and not accepted others. I think employers all over the state, especially school districts, are recognizing the importance of Juneteenth, recognizing the importance of having that be a day that people reflect and honor. And we have added it as a holiday for our 12-month employees. Our 12-month employees will, obviously be working. Juneteenth happens at June 19th. So that will, our 12-month folks are on duty. Our less than 12-month folks are going to be really rarely on duty. And so adding a paid holiday outside of the work year or on a day that is potentially outside the work year, it would be a little bit like adding Independence Day, July 4th for less than 12-month folks. Would they get paid for a day even though they're not on duty? So, our belief was that was a holiday that would typically fall outside the work year for our less than 12-month folks. That's been the same conversation we've had with the licensed unit initially proposed to add that as a paid holiday. Our proposal back to them was to make it a non-contract day because of the fact that their work year would typically end prior to Juneteenth. You see, we also did not add Friday after Thanksgiving. I mean, for us, and Michelle's not here, but the number she gave me is, when we have a paid holiday for less than 12-month employees and it's a day where they already don't work, making that a paid holiday has a cost of approximately $255,000 per each of those days. So adding Friday after Thanksgiving as a paid holiday, that would cost $255,000. Adding Juneteenth as a paid holiday, not only is it potentially occurring outside their work year, would have an additional cost of $255,000. We don't really have that cost for 12-month folks. What we have is productivity loss when we add a holiday. If it was previously a work day, that was a day that people were going to be working, we were already paying them, and so we're just not having work done on that day. So it's a little bit different when we're looking at cost. I think we're prepared to absorb that by adding Juneteenth for our 12-month folks, but are a little bit wary of adding that level of cost by adding Friday after Thanksgiving and or Juneteenth as paid holidays for less than 12 months.
We do have some less than 12-monthers that are still working, like office managers and others.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Melody. I could see that their work year extends. Our contract, as it sits right now, kind of splits it between you're either 12-month or less than 12-month, and we have rules that apply based on those two categories. So we don't differentiate in the less than 12-monthers, 11-month versus 10-month and so on. So we kind of lump them all together.
Right, but based on what you said that we are normally not here, and you're right, my work year usually ends before the 19th. Rarely does it ever go to the 19th, unless there's like inclement weather to make up or the rare occasion that we do go over. But our office managers, and forgive me, I can't recall the other ones right off the top of my head, but I do know that we do have others. Registrar, I think, also goes over. Some of our kitchen managers also go over. But I believe that they're still working, so I think
Yeah, understood.
we'll have to look at that part, and maybe add a new category.
Yeah, and I don't know, you probably don't have any less than 12-month folks that go all the way through July 4th. You know, if so, they would not have Independence Day as a holiday.
Yeah, I
even
don't
though-
believe we do. I believe office managers, Kara, you can help me on this one since you were formerly an office manager. I think they end at the end of June. Is that correct?
Just before the end of June usually. And
Just
tech support is on the same calendar, the tech twos. So they would be in that. I'm curious what the percentage is of 10-month employees that work beyond the end of the student school year. It would be a good number to know as we're having this conversation.
Yeah,
That's a good question. Something we can take a look at those calendars and see how many folks we have that fall under those categories.
There are currently 4 calendars out of 10 that go beyond student contact days. But again, those also, the calendars are adjustable year by year. So we determine what the calendar is going to be and how many days are going to be in those calendars as we're drafting the calendar for classified staff for the following school year. So they don't always fall on that same day. They may, in the past, they've been adjusted in 3 or 4 years ago, they were adjusted up to 15 days. So there's no guarantee that those folks will work beyond June 19 in following years consistently.
right. But more times than not, they have worked past June 19th.
So, some of them.
Yeah.
It sounds like a certain percentage have. Yeah, I mean, I think the potential certainly even exists. Like you said, if there's inclement weather, you know, could we have student days after June 19th? I guess you technically could. It's not our norm. And,
Right.
and again, that was the conversation we've had with licensed is non-contract day. But once we start adding paid holidays and we have a finite work year, then we're adding or either eliminating a student day or we're eliminating a PD day or a teacher work day or something of that nature, or we're adding cost into the system. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you that if it's an inclement weather day, then it is rare and it is out of our normal, and we can't look at that as a more times than not, or we do have categories that do. But with our office manager and our tech 2 and some of the others, they do more times than not work past June 19th. So we'll take a look at it, you know.
Yeah.
We'll come
I
back.
have a question if I can. So what would happen then? So like the office manager at the high schools is 12 months, so they would be off on June 19th. But as an admin support too, I would have to work that day, or how would that work then?
My understanding is we're looking at that as a non-contract day for employees.
Okay.
So similar to how Friday after Thanksgiving or, you know, Christmas Day work right now where people aren't working, but in the 12-monthers, that's technically a holiday. It's technically not a holiday designated for less than 12-month employees right now.
So just for clarity, so like Friday after Thanksgiving and Juneteenth for less than 12 months for those who are working wouldn't actually be working on those days. I mean, the Friday after Thanksgiving obviously would affect, you know, all of the less than 12-monthers, but so you're not working, but not getting paid for it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Conna.
No, I was just going to say that when we develop those calendars and folks work a certain number of days, even for our 12-monthers, we have non-contract days in their calendar, which they don't work. So sometimes like some of us will be working at, let's say, at the admin center, and we have days that are often connected to the winter break that we have to encumber as non-contract days, like for our receptionists or other classified staff, but other like administrative and super tech staff are still required to work in those things. So we just adjust the work calendar for the year for those folks.
So it's possible that I would have a non-contract day after student days stop, that I would have a non-contract day that's unpaid, and it would extend my week then to be an extra day later in the week, as opposed to finishing it off early.
It's possible.
Okay.
It's possible. And actually Conna was talking about that in our team meeting, how there's some of the discussion has been more geared around starting the school year earlier in the summer/fall. So we're not continuing on into that mid to late June timeframe right now. That's potential right now.
Yeah, not for this coming 22-23 year, but
Right.
like forward 23, 24, 24, 25, which feels far away when you say it like that, but it's yeah, thinking ahead.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, we'll take a look at it in caucus.
Okay. Reclassifications. I'll introduce this one and then turn it over to Saide. She is intimately involved in the reclassification process. I think so your only proposal there was to sort of eliminate this initial gatekeeping function of does the request in question meet the definition of a reclass, and therefore move on to the committee for review. And I think I talked about this last time, but just to refresh, the reason why I think that process was set up is it is a little bit complex as to what exactly is a reclass and how does that compare to my workload has gone up, or the market my rate of pay is out of whack with what the market is doing. And so we do get requests that are not true reclass requests. They're not, I feel like I'm doing the duties of a higher job classification there. I feel like I'm doing more of the duties that I've traditionally done. So my workload has increased. And so this initial filter, because as Saide said, it is a bit of an issue to try and get everyone together, to review reclassification requests. So having this initial filter, we feel like has value to it. And so we want that to be as objective as possible. We agree that we don't want to create a system where the district representative in that initial gatekeeping is just always claiming, well, this doesn't look like a legitimate reclass request to me, so it doesn't move on to the committee. So we're not looking for that type of a veto scenario. But honestly, we also don't want to set up a system where if it took mutual agreement for it not to move on to the committee, I could see a scenario where the union person would be worried about looking like the bad guy to their fellow member who submitted the request. So they may say, well, they may never want to deem it an inappropriate reclass request because, they feel like they were, again, taking a position contrary to their member, and there would be some pressure there as well. So we talked about, should it be that there has to be mutual agreement to have it not move on to the committee? But we really did worry about a scenario where the union rep would feel compelled always to move it on to the committee to not be put in that position. And that would, I respect that concern. But again, we want it to be as objective as possible. So we talked about having a checklist, a neutral, objective checklist, that those district and union rep would go through to determine whether something moved on to the committee or not. And so it's less of a, unquantifiable, just kind of determination, and more of based on criteria that are established. So Saide, could you talk a little bit more about this one? I know that you participate in this process, this initial gatekeeping process, so it might be helpful to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. So yeah, as we were thinking about making sure that we have a process that is completely transparent and without sending a message to any of our employees that we're just shooting down any request that comes through arbitrarily. We already have a checklist internally in HR for the entire reclassification process, because there are many steps involved beyond the submission of an application and notifying the employee and the supervisor of the change. We have a list of things to do on the back end. So creating something similar for someone, the representative from the district and the representative from the union, who at this moment is myself and Melody, creating a checklist to see if that application meets the minimum requirement to move forward to a larger committee of 7 individuals, including currently Hannah, who takes notes during the session, potentially the employee that's submitting the application, and potentially the employee supervisor is part of that process. So prior to that, going through a very brief checklist to make sure it meets the minimum requirements. So have their duties, the level of required skill, has the level of responsibility changed significantly over a period of time, without having that initial conversation between the supervisor and the employee about taking on additional responsibilities, because we have language in the contract that allows for that. It's working in a higher classification, and that's a conversation that's previously had with an employee. An employee has to agree to work in a higher classification, and they get paid for working in that classification for a defined period of time to fill a role or a need in the building. And it turns out to be a win-win for both parties. So this is outside of that. So is there a prolonged period of time where someone is working and performing duties, the skills that are required and or the responsibility are significantly changed over time? Does it meet that threshold? And if after reviewing an application, we agree that, and we can prove, we can show it in the application that it does meet it, then it seems like that might be something we can bring forward to the committee. So my proposal is that internally, Melody and I, for now, create that checklist so we can look at these applications in a more formalized, systematic way, as opposed to what we're doing currently, which is reviewing applications, having discussions about it, and then making that determination. But if we can put it on paper and actually show evidence in the application that they do meet the criteria or they don't, and move forward in that fashion, I feel would just strengthen the process.
So this like kind of more transparent checklist process is something that would be sort of developed by the smaller committee, or?
I'm proposing it's developed by myself and Melody, since we're the two that actually the applications come to right now. Prior to Melody, it was Devin. Prior to that, it was the president. Prior to that, right? So over the past 10 plus years, I've worked with multiple people in that role, but it just makes sense to create some sort of checklist just to make sure that the application does meet the criteria to move forward. And if it doesn't, just like explaining why in more detail than what we do currently, because we do explain why it doesn't move forward, but it's in very general terms.
So I think, Rob, we did envision it as a document that was mutually created or mutually agreed upon between HCU and the district.
Okay. I guess we can talk about this as a team unless there's any other burning questions that Melody or anybody else has.
Okay. I think that brings us to transportation, which we've talked about numerous times. And for us, we're still not comfortable making the change here in B. I mean, I appreciate that you guys have made some efforts to obviously move on this topic. We're continuing to see this as kind of a misplaced area to get at the core issue here, because we just don't see these as charters. I mean, I think I really want to communicate that we want our district folks to drive during the summers. And we're committed to them having those trips and those driving routes that happen during the summer. But we're also very committed to making sure that those trips go. And if we don't have enough drivers, we're going to go to whatever we have to go to make sure those trips run. So, you know, limiting it to 4, or even having kind of a process where the district seeks approval to go beyond that, just doesn't feel workable for us, because the potential that's created there is still the inability to have a trip run that was going to benefit students. And I'm not saying you guys would stand in the way of opportunities for kids, but sometimes those things come up last minute, you know, and are we going to have the ability to engage in a discussion prior to approving those trips? You know, I don't know that that's always going to be possible. And so, you know, I don't know what else to say other than we want folks to sign up for summer driving. And if they do, they're going to be the district's first go-to to get those trips to run, because these are not situations like our typical charter bus situation where we're looking to run a vehicle that's not our school or a school vehicle. What we're looking to do is use our school buses typically, or a van, I think, or whatnot, to run these trips. So, you know, we want them to be in-house, but if we don't have enough people sign up, then they will be outside entities that serve that function. So we're feeling uncomfortable with the limit on that, because for us, it should be driven by, you know, what are the needs going on? How many folks did we have sign up, and so that they're available to drive? And then beyond that, it's just, you know, what do we need to secure so we can make those trips go? So Carol, you know, transportation's kind of in your wheelhouse. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that before we open it up for questions. Carol's here, isn't she? I tried to call on somebody earlier who wasn't.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where my unmute button is. Sorry. No, I don't. I do have a question. Hannah, can you scroll down a little bit? Because I missed last time's session. I don't have anything about that. But down here, number 4, was this the last proposed language where it says pending driver availability? Drivers will initially be assigned?
I don't honestly recall that.
Okay, I can look it up in the notes later. I can't remember either. We went back and forth with, should it be will, should it be may, but.
I think that was something that was agreed on, right?
Well, that's what I thought too, but I was thinking it was may, but okay, it was will. You know what? It's been a long few months. I can't remember. But no, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Carol, have you given any more thought or looked into any more of the prospects of hiring, you know, more of a 12-month driver model, or is that not something that a road you're going down right now?
I have done some looking into maybe extending it to 11 month. 12-month kind of brings on some difficulties with, you know, vacations and that kind of stuff, just depending on what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But right now, you know, with as short as we are and everything else, our main focus has just been on trying to hire drivers, period. Mm-hmm. But it has something that's kind of intrigued us, and I have thought about it and looked at different options.
And Carol, just so I make sure that I'm speaking correctly on this topic, I mean, can you recall times this past summer or other summers where people had signed up to drive, had made themselves available to drive, but were denied a trip in favor of an outside entity during that summer window? No.
Last summer was a complete and total anomaly. I have, in all my 30 years, last summer was insane with the amount of programs and stuff that came in. Yeah, it was very much an anomaly. If anybody wants to work in the summer, we find them work. I mean, there's always work to do, but last summer was just beyond our capabilities. And again, a lot of this stuff we did not know is happening because of the extra funding coming in from schools.
Right.
So Right, that played a role in it too, a very large role in it.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
And as I said before, I think we can expect the anomaly to continue this year. I mean, with the focus on education recovery or accelerated learning, I think we're going to see it probably extending this year, but I do think we can treat it as an anomaly, you know.
The other thing too that I want to point out, because we experienced this even over Christmas break, you know, we had a heck of a time getting the trips filled for Christmas break. And, you know, the honest truth is that people are tired, you know, people that normally work in the summer, people that normally would be like, yeah, I'll do trips over Christmas break. They were like, no, I'm just, you know, I need a break. I need to go see my family. I need to just be off. And I think that plays a piece in it too. And I certainly can't blame anybody. You know, I would have liked to take this summer and Christmas break off too. You know, I mean, I think everybody was just really ready for a break. But that also makes it hard too, when we go to look at different things.
Well, and I can agree with some of that. Like, I mean, I could see people getting burned out because, you know, they were forced to work during the pandemic part. You know, they're out there working, but yet they can't see their families necessarily because so many of them were in quarantine. And they were just fed up. Like, you know, I mean, they were working in this environment and it's very stressful. So I could see the burnout for that. You know, I totally get that. You know, I totally agree with that part, Carol. So.
And honestly, I mean, who knows with this summer, we may have more people back to like we traditionally have that want to work. But I'm not holding my breath. You know, one of the things that we did last summer is we also paid drivers at the top step for summer contract in hoping to enticing. And we still had the lowest number of people come forward that wanted to work. So
just to be clear for me, you mean like no matter what step they were on in their normal work, you offered them top step for summer?
Right, because that's a separate from their
Okay.
regular school year contract. So yes, no matter where you were on the pay scale, we offered top wage and we still struggled to get people. And I think, again, it just went to, you know, people were just tired.
I agree with you, Carol, that was part of it, but also it was the uncertainty and the inability to know what the schedule was going to be at the end of the year. It was kind of put out there that, yes, if you want to work, but there was no schedules up until after we left for the year. So I think that made it more difficult for people to sign up, you know, and I did come in and ask if you needed help, you know, as one of those drivers. Unfortunately, I didn't help very long because I ended up with COVID. But I do think that that was part of it for a lot of people, was that there was no set schedule until past the school year.
And I think some of that's the way the governor's office provided those funds very late in the calendar year. And anecdotally, I've heard stories that people have learned the lessons of that. Like, it was a good idea to provide those funds and make sure those programs happen. But I think, you know, talking to other superintendents around the state and other board members and people in the governor's office, I think people are clear it seems they understood the lessons of if we're going to do that again, let's plan a little bit farther ahead. So hopefully, again, last year will be an absolute anomaly. This year, maybe we have some more accelerated learning programs, and then maybe get back to something closer to normal or pre-pandemic conditions going forward.
And I agree, Mark, that's exactly what I was going to say. You know, I had 3 weeks to route and hire and implement. And so even though since about January, we had been told there's going to be all these programs, hundreds of programs, which there were, we didn't get dates and times and stuff to even route until 3 weeks. And it was insanity. And, you know, I mean, everybody's goal is to not repeat that, but also, you know, Lori, I mean, you were one of them that came to me and said, you know what, I need a break. I'm tired. And it's like, hey, totally get it. And so, you know, we appreciated you coming forward, you know, toward in August and helping us out. And unfortunately, you know, you got COVID from helping us out. But yeah, I mean, it was just, we just had a lot of people that just chose last summer not to work. And I think a lot of that was for their own mental well-being of themselves and their family, for sure.
Can I make a suggestion? Something that's been helpful just because I'm talking about a break for us. Typically, when we've been doing license bargaining, we do about an hour. We take a little 5 or 10 minute break and then come back. And just wanted to see if you guys were open to that, if this discussion about Article 20 is finished right for now.
I'm okay with that if everybody else is.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, I think we only have one article left to present. 21, I think 28 is just, Hannah, that's just a renumbering or something, isn't it?
Yeah, do we want to do that and then we'll go to our court and then we can.
Yeah, I agree with Kana. A break would be good, but probably we can get through 21 and then take a break, and if that works.
Sure.
Yeah, that
Okay.
works for me.
Awesome.
And,
thank you.
And Brian, Michelle Morrison has joined us. And so I thought maybe while Hannah's getting the next article, she's already got it ready. Never mind.
And it's fast.
Yeah, but I wanted to give Michelle a chance to talk about the deduction process so that Melody understood what that was.
Okay, great. Oh, thanks for that reminder. So Article 21, professional improvement. We've accepted several of the changes that you proposed. I think we really do want to support continued education and people's growth. So increasing that professional improvement fund to $40,000. We've accepted that from the current 30. Those additional increases then down in that next paragraph are as you had proposed, increasing that per person amount, and then kind of the reapply amount from $800 to $1,000, and then so a maximum of $1,500. So we have agreed to those. The one piece we didn't pick up from your proposal was down there in C, where an employee may visit another school or facility with the district or attend a class workshop. It was the addition of class that we didn't add. And honestly, it's because the class is going to be a reoccurring deal. And so if that was happening during somebody's work hours, it's probably not going to be workable. It's probably not going to be agreed to by the supervisor. You know, I could see it, perhaps if you had to leave 15 minutes early to be able to make a class, so adjusting the work schedule, that type of arrangement may be workable. But if it was going to significantly cut into that work time, probably wouldn't be something that a supervisor is going to agree to. So a workshop, you know, conference, those types of things are one-offs, and so those have less of an impact, obviously. So we didn't pick up that addition of class, but we did add the dollar changes that you had proposed.
Okay, well, yeah, well, we appreciate you guys accepting the idea of raising it to a level that I think makes a little more sense given the market for education. And then I guess for C, we'll just talk about it as a team, unless my team has any burning questions. All right.
Okay. Well, hearing none, Michelle Morrison, the question, when we were talking about payroll deductions, Hannah, do you mind putting that article back up? Thank you. So, Michelle, it was that A2, and that Melody, I think, not to speak for you, Melody, but I summarize your question, and then if I get it kind of wrong, please correct me. But I think the question there in C, our language about in accordance with practices set forth by the payroll department, I think my recollection was that was intended to reflect that we currently have things that people need to do in order to sign up for a deduction. And so some of those mechanical pieces people will still need to do. We were not anticipating adding things, were we?
No, I think we need to develop, if this language moves forward, we will need to develop a form. And in that will have nuances around the amount to be deposited into which account, and which has priority in the event that someone takes unpaid leave, or whether it's a percentage or a lump sum amount, how all of those things play together. So I just wanted to make sure that we had some flexibility as we're setting this up to be effective in July 1st, that whatever our payroll department finds most workable, that's what we will put forward here.
Gotcha.
Okay. I was just concerned that this was not, it's been a while since I set up my direct deposit, so I don't remember what I did to set it up. But I didn't know if there was a form or a processes, practices that you've already got set up for the direct deposits, or if this was something you're going to create. Because if this didn't move forward, I didn't want to like leave a blank check for you guys to, not that you would develop, 15 hoops for somebody to jump through, because that's more work for you. But I just wanted to know that we were agreeing on what was coming forth to the members before we agreed to it. So, but if it's something that's already in place, then.
Well, we do have our current direct deposit form and our process. We've experienced some fraud attempts on direct deposit when they're submitted electronically. So we do have some requirements around that. But the form itself would have to be modified to have a primary and then secondary deposit account information on there. So that's where I wanted flexibility to work through that. We don't have that form currently. Again, and that's why we kind of need the timeline to make sure that we have that in place, and that our systems can handle that additional deduction.
Okay. So Michelle, if I'm hearing you correctly, what needs to be identified by folks is, is it a set amount each month going to this financial institution versus this one? And if there's insufficient, the paycheck's insufficient because of unpaid leave, which one does it go to first, basically, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It gets pretty tricky, and to be completely transparent, I guess it's not in the management interest to be in the middle of someone's banking. So again, we would definitely prefer that folks set up their banking and do online banking to separate their paychecks out. But if this is, something that's critical to members, then we will implement it. But there are some nuances around, just the instructions to payroll on what to do in the event of it's an unusual paycheck.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the only other article I believe we had was 28 contracting out, and we just updated a reference point there, correct, Hannah? Our note is updated article number referenced in section C, which I think you guys brought this forward last time.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think we're ready to TA this one.
Yeah, so it wasn't referencing the mileage, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good catch. We were hoping you'd miss that one, Yeah. So other than that, this is current language. Okay, Kana, thank you for being the watchdog of making sure we get our mental breaks.
No worries. Debbie and Melody, do you guys think like 10 minutes, come back at 11:25, and then we can have you guys share your 3 articles? Does that sound all right? And then we can do MOUs and then take a lunch break.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
Okay, let's plan to come back at 11:25.
Okay.
Great, thank you. We'll see you then.
Guys, see you then.
All right, Debbie and Melody, were you guys going to present or did you want Hannah to present?
No, I think we've got it. Kira, she wanted to mention something to Hannah too about Article 2.
Yeah, we had originally intended to present Article 2 now, but I think we're going to hold off just so that we can combine what you had presented earlier before we respond, just to kind of keep the paperwork clear. So Hannah, we're hoping maybe if you could send that to us before we have our lunchtime caucus, then we can work on it during caucus and maybe present after lunch on Article 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And then I will present the other articles for our team.
Is everybody from my team back? Rob, are you back? Let's get going on Article 15. I'm not sure where Rob's at right now. Anyway, Article 15, I think we are possibly ready to TA on this. If can you scroll down on there and just let's see, is there any wait, whoa, slow on the scrolling. Slow down. Hold on here. Okay, so it was on F, right? I think we agreed on I think we agreed on this. Kara, isn't that correct? We're ready TA on this. I think we accepted
Yeah, so the last presentation, I think, was just 90 days in F
on the bereavement, yeah.
for bereavement leave, which we've accepted. And then there's some more language down. So I'm going to scroll for a bit. Hold on.
Okay.
All the way down at the bottom.
Right.
And it was an O, family
Yes.
leave in accordance with Oregon law. So we accepted that also.
Right, right. That was the excuse me, the recent one. Okay, so we're ready to TA on that then.
Great,
So,
fantastic.
yes. And then I guess we're on Article 24 and
You guys already talked about 2.
yeah,
we
we
gonna
talked
wait on
about we talked about 2. We're gonna wait till they get till we get their counter, and then we already went through 15, and now you could be up on Article 24.
Okay, great. All right. So I think we are going to accept A. As I think proposed by management. I'm trying to think if there was. Oh, I think it was just the in effect at the time of the alleged violation. We could kind of understand why you would want to do that. If it was MOU after the fact. We're not going to grieve something that's there wasn't agreement on at the time. So we understood that and accepted it. And then I think for 3, we were going to kind of revert to our proposal is going to be to revert to current contract language.
Sorry. Good.
Or I guess it was it in 2 we were going to go to current contract language, right?
3 is 3 was is original language.
Yeah, I think both 2 and 3. 3 was, or 2 we were going to go back to current contract language. And then 3
Is
yeah, we're accepting the current contract language. And then I think that was it. I think everything else was good. There were, I think, various changes that we both agreed to.
Yeah, I don't even remember when we had the last exchange on this one. I confess I'm drawing a blank on this article. Has it been a while since we traded this one back and forth, or is my memory just failing me?
Let me see.
Are they a combination?
It was in June, and I think we dropped the ball on this. That was my fault. So
Yeah,
it has been a while.
I think we thought it was in your court.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, it doesn't look like there's too much still going on in this one though. Okay.
Yeah, no, not too much, because yeah, that was the one that we thought we were waiting for your response, and it turns out it was our court. So that was our mess up. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no big deal. We'll take a look at this one. So that where the changes were made that looked like they were up in the beginning. Like you had just
it was accepting A, going to current contract for 2 and 3, basically.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we'll take a look. I have to drag out our old proposals on that one. Okay.
And I guess that's it, right? Because we're gonna talk about 2 as a team.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to send over our Article 2, and then you guys can factor that into, however you want to respond on that one. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, considering that we were basically ready to present our additions, although I think we see Article 2 is probably not something that we're going to completely TA, like there might be some more additions, definitions as we finish up bargaining. There also might not be. But we figured we'd sort of like leave it open just in case, because it's a good kind of catch-all article, just to put some stuff in. But so we already have some stuff, but we'll take a look at your guys' edition of the
Plan of assistance.
Plan of assistance. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that sounds good. I agree. That article may just stay open until we get to the end, just to make sure that we don't have other pieces that we're tinkering with. So that's fine.
Okay, great.
All right. So Kana, help me remember. So we're up after a lunch break. Do you want to take our break, and then Michelle was going to present on financials? Is that sort of the plan? I think we wanted to talk as a team over the break. Is that right?
Yeah. I think there was, if I recollect what was on the agenda, we were going to have a conversation around MOUs, and just if we were going to retain those as MOUs, or if we were going to need to make adjustments to add those into the contract as a part of the contract language. Is that correct, Melody and Debbie? I saw some people nodding their heads, so okay.
Yes.
You guys want to talk that through?
Yeah, we can. I was going to mention, I sent an information request on the cell phone stipend one. Like, do we even do that anymore? Is that like, I mean, who gets a cell phone stipend, and what employees have that? Like, is it worth even having? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I can speak to part of that. Maybe I will need to get some support from Saide, but we have that in place just because I know we do have classified staff that are having to work off-site, and I know it's been with our continued school program for students that are in an extended program that takes them into maybe 21. And so some of those folks support students off-site. And so I know that they need a cell phone for access for various reasons. And then I know there were maybe others, but those are that's the position that I recall most recently. Saide?
Okay.
So the cell phone stipend is something that we put in place for staff members who are away from a school or a location where they cannot have access to a landline for a prolonged period of time. My alarm just went off. For a prolonged period of time. So for staff who go from building to building and can access a phone in a building, they're not offered a stipend. But for staff who are off campus in the community, and I think we put this in place several years ago, also as a safety measure for like our outreach staff who work in recruiting in our migrant camps, just providing them with an additional level of communication and support so we can reach out to them and they can reach out to us if need be. We have a list of staff that have that stipend attached to their job, which we are happy to share. But the gist is they're unable to, for a length of time, have access to a district phone.
I was just curious because some of them have, like, I know some of the facilities, they have work phones that are assigned to them. So I didn't know, and I know I thought at one time transportation had some if people didn't have them. I forget how that went, but I was just wondering, like, I mean, if it's going to be something we're going to use, my idea is like, I mean, we should put it in the contract instead of just keeping it as like an MOA. You know, I mean, if it's going to be something, that was my question on that, because I didn't know, you know, with everybody having cell phones now, like I didn't know what we currently are doing with that. So
yeah, I apologize, I haven't reviewed that one. So Debbie, that's a existing MOA right now. Is that all it covers, is what the stipend is going to be?
Yeah, pretty much. It just talks about, yeah, the whole thing is just about the cell phone stipend. So you know, I mean, I don't know where we would incorporate that in, but we probably should, I would think, if it's going to be something we're going to hang on to. Because I know when those, you know, when like over at the transition services, or when they, you know, because a lot of them go on max and are out and about. I know I was talking about that. They need to definitely have, you know, communication available, you know, when they're out and about in the city, of course. So
yeah, I guess I would agree with you. I mean, we tend to look at MOUs or MOAs as, you know, are those things that are going to have a shelf life and then go away. Probably cell phones aren't going away. So I mean, how many people, you guys, Kana and Saide, it sounds like we have a handful of positions that we do that with, where that stipend is provided. Okay. Is that something likely to keep going?
I think we probably need some more information as far as who's using it, who has the stipend, do they still use it, what other forms, like Debbie's talking about how some staff are given phones. And so I know that's the case, I believe, some of our custodial staff as well. So I just want to make sure I'm up to date as to the actual number. So I just reached out and hopefully we'll have that information shortly.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm kind of typically a proponent of not having a bunch of random MOAs or MOUs hanging on to the end of a contract, especially if they have no expiration date. So I appreciate, Debbie, I appreciate you bringing some of those up, and like, should this stay as an MOU? Should it go into the contract, et cetera? What else?
Yeah.
You have some
No,
others?
there's quite a few.
Yeah, and then the other one with the employment of retired employees. Now that one, like, I mean, I can see how that's an MOA because it has, like an end date.
Yeah.
So I understand that part, and that could be like adjusted or whatever, but like, I mean, we have like summer bargaining work and interns that have been in here.
Yeah, I see the interns one now.
It's just been in here a long time, and, we can, work together wherever you want to put them if we all, agree that they should be in the contract or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the reason we wanted to have the discussion, because, we've opened a slew of articles, made proposals on most of the ones that we've opened. But this is sort of, some of these are kind of weird. Like if we created an article around summer bargaining unit work, which I could foresee making sense, it's a fairly, it's a fairly in-depth MOA.
It is.
I mean, not necessarily compared to some of the ones that we've negotiated in the last year or two. But it's, so where would it fit, and how would we sort of approach it?
Yeah, I don't want to disrupt a bunch of articles. The one on summer bargaining unit work would probably have little fingers in a variety of different articles, right? Recognition, maybe salary, maybe. The cell phone stipend, that one to me is a far more simpler one to incorporate in if the parties choose to do that, after we take a look at it and have some conversation about it, just because I think we have other places where we set forth like a stipend or what have you, or it naturally would land some compensation related articles. So reemployment of retired employees, I'd like to take a look at that one, have some conversation as a team. That one, it has a date. If I'm looking, did we renew it, or is the draft that you have, does it still have a date of 2016 on it? Or do we have an updated one? I think I'm just looking at an old one.
Yeah, it goes through 2018, 21, this
The new one.
3-year contract.
Okay.
Yeah, it's old.
And that's,
I didn't know if we updated the MOU or not.
yeah, and I
this
guess,
was-
go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, that it was came up in December of 19.
It was
Got
updated with the PERS change.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think, Brian, some of these are, you're correct in the sense that they hit many different articles. And so that's why they're placed here as an MOA.
Yeah.
Because of that overarching component of it. But I do agree that looking at the cell phone stipend seems like an appropriate one. And I know there's 4 altogether that I see. Interns is another one. And I'm not even familiar with that one, to be perfectly honest.
Well, your signature's on it.
Yeah, that's true. The intern one came up, I think it was a request from maintenance facilities to be able to bring on some interns that could potentially work alongside our journeymen and gain experience with the hopes of eventually hiring them on as employees. But those programs always need a place to intern. And so being that place allows us the opportunity to get potentially access to those students and potentially future employees. So it was a one-time ask. And so we included it as an MOU as opposed to putting it in the contract. And I honestly don't know if that program is still functioning. So we can reach out to facilities, Dave Peterson, and ask.
Yeah, it looks like it's, according to this, goes 18 to 21. Were sort of the school years that were affected.
Well, as long as PCC runs the program.
Yep.
Right. I think the MOU goes that long. I'm not sure whether the program.
It might still be going on.
Right. That was a 1-year program, but we just incorporated into our contract, which is a 3-year contract.
Yep.
Okay, it looks like we can have some conversation and follow up on the MOUs and potentially come back. I think like the components around the cell phone stipend might be one that we want to move into the regular contract.
Yeah, I do like, and Debbie, you may have said this, I do like keeping the rehire retirees one as an MOU, only because the landscape around that has definitely shifted under us a couple of times and may continue to do so. You know, we're going to come up on our end date that they originally set for kind of that unlimited work after retirement. I don't know if they're going to extend that or not. And so
Probably should being how they're so short of everything. I would think that would be in their best interest to.
It seems like the logic behind creating it in the first place would argue to extend it. So I don't know why.
Yeah.
Why they wouldn't. But so anyway, that's just a topic that feels like it has some variability to it. So
sure,
that one feels like it's appropriate here. But yeah, definitely would take a look in a little more detail at some of these. Okay, anything else we want to cover before we take a break? And if not, Connor, what were you thinking schedule wise?
It looks like we are slated to have a lunch break for about an hour, which puts us at 1 o'clock. And I think that's when Michelle was going to do financials between 1 and 1:30. I guess, are you guys okay if we do an extra 10 minutes on that and just say that we'll come back at 1, just so we have time to kind of have more to eat? And just because we're on our own, the working, like what we normally do in a caucus altogether would be different than what we're going to do now in terms of needing to take a actual break to get our lunch and heat up on our own and stuff. So does that sound good to you, Debbie and Melody?
I'm good with it. I'm easy. That's fine.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and stop recording and
Connor, what do you want to do as far as our team goes? When do you want to be back in caucus for us?
So we did get one more article that we could TA. So we're over the 50% mark. Nice work, everyone. Thank you.
Connor, you said Article 24 or 28, it's 28 T8, or is that something you have questions about?
No, it was the article, I'm sorry, and I might have wrote down the wrong one. It was the one that you guys presented that we had back in June of 2021 had shared with you, and then we're waiting.
Okay.
That's Article 24 grievance. I think we are ready. The contracting out one, we're ready to TA also. That was just a change in the article reference. So there's 2 that are ready for TA, and then, but grievance, that one we just haven't dealt with it in a while. So we need to kind of circle back to that one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, my apologies, Debbie. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I just want to make sure I've got it right.
So 2 more. Yay. All right. I think Hannah's going to present for Michelle.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, every now and again, my microphone will go Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse on me. And so it's important to me that it's not doing that, especially when we're being recorded on such an important topic. Happy to see everybody here, you guys. Thank you so much for your time and continued work on our financials. You're going to recognize a format of this presentation. Some of the introductory information is going to seem a little redundant for folks who have managed to view this on an ongoing basis, but I still think it's important to anchor back to it, and our team believes that as well. We can move forward. Thank you, Hannah, for presenting for me. These are the things that are included in today's presentation. I've mentioned before, I think it's important that we continue to embed the link to the prior presentation just for continuity purposes, so that you and both teams have access to that for reference as we move for the process. It's looking to be quite iterative, and we'd hate for information to get lost as we continue to collaborate. We're going to talk about the guiding principles and approach again to the offer. We're going to look at HCU's counter to the district's original offer, our second offer back, and then we'll review our interpretation of HCU's second counter offer, and then we'll go ahead and present what we have to share today and look at our next steps. Thank you, Hannah. So these again are guiding principles, and these principles are for, well, as we move with both groups through the bargain, we have shared principles that are stated and explicit. I will always pretty much zoom in on the being financially responsible, because that's my primary scope, is to be in compliance with state law and best practices, and that we always maintain a balanced budget so we don't enter into agreements that we can't pay for. The second really important piece here is the long-term service level stability. So acknowledging that there are one-time funds available to the district, but that they are a one-time deal, and that as we use those targeting meeting the needs of our students, that we're not obligating the district in a way that would make us have to reduce positions in the future. So just keeping that in mind as we're looking at the longer view. And the other final piece here is recognizing the cost and challenges that come with attrition. We want to offer a competitive employee package that's attractive and makes us a competitive employer. And thankfully, in partnership with HCU leadership, we've done the compensation study that we promised out of the last bargain, and we're using that to move us forward through this proposal. We continue to reference that and keep that as a priority. Any questions? Super familiar to everybody here today. We do have the district approach to the offer. So being transparent, sharing freely our district financial information. We've shared information throughout our budget processes all along. Are anything related to ESSER funds, student investment account dollars, we continue to share that. We continue to answer questions as they're brought forward. And as we have time to address the questions, typically if we have an information request and it's not something that our systems can automatically produce, then we have to kind of create information to share in a comprehensive way. And we make time to do that in person so that we can answer any questions that might come up as well. We're looking for a 3-year bargain. We're already over halfway through the first year. So we want to make sure that we're trying to get some stability from members so that they can see their growth in wages and benefits over that time period. And it allows the district, the management side, to plan for sustainability. So making reductions and adjustments and increases where necessary, again, to maintain that stability and services to students. Really targeting towards market demand, like I mentioned before, and keeping our attrition to a minimum where possible, and taking care of staff needs. We're student-centered, and right now that's been more challenging than ever to really identify what the students need and then to mobilize in a way that meets those needs. And we'll continue to do that. The last piece is just being timely. We're kind of getting a little bit untimely with the point in the year that we are in the bargain to not have it completed yet. But when it is completed, we want to be sure that we have our implementation details are explicit and everybody understands what the next steps are, when to expect changes that members will be impacted by. And then just this was a note that we added, I think, just last time around the non-traditional initiation of financials. So typically we would wait until we were through language to a point where the union would bring their initial financial information, their package forward, their ask, And then we would respond to that. We would analyze it and respond to it. And this bargain, we were out of the gate first, just recognizing that the pressure that members were feeling to get a settlement sooner than later in response to a lot of the stressors in our systems right now. Okay. All old news. We have a little bit more old news. This is a familiar slide. This was HCU's counter to the district's original offer. I just wanted to revisit what that ask was. You can see the wage study adjustment was actually in agreement with the district as far as a 3-year approach to implementing the wage study adjustment. There's the wage step advancement. Again, that shift from 3% to 4.2% comes with a significant dollar figure. So I just wanted to make sure that we see that. We have the general salary increase at 6%. So the step for folks that qualified for a step and general salary increase, that would have been a 10.2% increase. And that's not including any wage study adjustment for that particular position. We both agreed that the bilingual stipend was a value add, and that would be a good skill to compensate members for. We had an ask for a 6% longevity step at 10, 15, and 20 years, which is different than just a lump sum on the top step, which is something that we have settled in prior bargains. The insurance cap increase, we initially offered $25 per month, and it's here at $50 per month. Insurance opt-out increase to $300. That was $100 per month per person that qualified for that. And so over the 3-year period, that was $300, $3,600 total. We have the employee waive portion of the pool. That's acknowledged. And the final row here is our estimated value of the offer. So that's my estimate of the price tag, and that's how I would have to budget for that. So that was HCU's counter to our original offer. And if we move to the next slide, we can see the district HSD offer 2. We can see that the wage study adjustment is still there. Our step advancement, we didn't offer to change that. It's still 3% for each step up to step 9, I believe, and then it goes to 4% up to the last step. And then folks are on the last step and would only experience the general salary increase every year thereafter. Our general salary increase did increase to 2.5% per year for each of the 3 years, for a cumulative increase of 7.5%. Let's see here. We countered with our longevity bonus for the top step in 2021. So in the current year, we would calculate anyone who didn't have step movement from last year into the current year, they would receive a $500 stipend. And then in year 2 and 3, we have worked in that retention bonus for those milestone years only. So 10, 15, and 20 years, they would get that in, let's see here. In year 2, I know that we have an example coming up from that, but I remember talking in depth about how we would administer that in year 2, given that everyone would have received a certain amount of retention bonus. So our insurance cap increase, we increased ours, and we've highlighted the yellow highlight in this table represents anywhere where the district made movement from our initial offer towards what HCU was asking for. So that's the purpose of the yellow highlight. The insurance opt-out increase, that's not something that we've planned, budgeted, or planned to do in the current year. And so what you see here is kind of an incremental agreement. We work towards that, and we have met that ask by year 3. But in the first year, there's no movement. Year 2 is like a half step, and then it's fully implemented by year 3. And then it's a similar approach for the employee waive portion to the pool. It's a half step in year 2 and fully stepped over in year 3. And the estimated value of the offer, you can see there is just over $8.6 million. One of the things that we did in order to make movement in those other areas was we removed the bilingual stipend estimated costs, because we're going to cover those out of very specific fund and not the general fund, which is where the majority of these other expenses will come from. So that gave us more room to work with in negotiations, and we got some movement that way. Any questions so far? I'm wondering if everyone is muted.
Yeah, we're muted. I have a question, Michelle.
Sure.
What fund is the bilingual stipend coming out of exactly?
The student investment account.
Okay, thank you.
And that is sustainable over time. That was, I know, one of our early conversations about that was that we didn't want it to be a fund that wouldn't be ongoing, because we don't want to drop it in 2 or 3 years and have to make a hard choice about it. So the student investment account does have its own taxing structure, and we anticipate that it will be funded.
Yeah, it's not the one-time funds. It is it's less certain, but it is continuous, right? Like there's no certainty as to how much we will receive in SIA funding over the course of the next 5-10 years, but at least it is a recurring source of revenue, not just a one-time. But there's no guarantee of it being funded at any given level.
Correct. Thank you, Mark.
So for the longevity, it looks like you guys are proposing for year 1 it's just a flat $500 bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And then the retention bonus sort of picks up where that leaves off. Is that right? So it's $500 for 10 years, $750 for 15 years, and $1,000 for 20. And that those are all flat amounts, right?
Yeah, correct. And I think, that if you look at that 20 plus years, get $1,000 in year 2, because we didn't want to miss people who had already put in their 20 years, but missed the bonus. So we did estimate, adding that as part of the cost of the year 2, which would be year 1 implementation of that structure. And it would start in 22, 23. Okay, and this was our offer. This isn't today's offer. This was our offer back to your counter. So we're on a journey here. And if we move ahead one more slide. Oh, can somebody mute? Can anybody see who that is?
Rob, I think that might be you.
No, it's not me.
Oh.
John Frank is unmuted.
John Frank is on. Yep. John, could you please mute? Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we have HCU counter offer 2. And so this is what you guys brought back to us after our second offer. The highlighted yellow items are just changes. So you can see that the wage study adjustment is moved from spread out over 3 years to moved up into the first 2 years. And you can see that the general salary increase is dropped in year 2 and 3 from 6% to 5%. The wage step advancement at 4.2% is still there. Our, let's see, the estimated cost on the longevity step at 4.2%. You can see that I had requested assistance from former Chief Financial Officer Adam Stewart on that one, because it was pretty granular how to get in there and calculate those costs. So he assisted me with that, and that's the estimate we have. Insurance cap increase stayed the same. We have our insurance opt-out increase is still the same here as the all of those pieces are still the same. You can see in article highlighted in green, Article 13 holidays. I put that here because it has a pretty significant financial impact. And so the cost of that would require us to change something else in order to make that happen. So I have the details in my notes, and so I'll go ahead and share that with you, just a breakout. The holidays that were requested were Juneteenth for 12-month employees and Juneteenth holiday for 10-month employees, which for 10-month employees, it typically wouldn't fall within a normal work calendar, is my understanding. And then we had a request for the day after Thanksgiving for 10-month employees. So the value for our 12-month employees only for a holiday is just under $52,000. And the estimated cost for a 10-month only employees would be just over $225,000. And so for combined, for Juneteenth to be a holiday for both of those, it would be just over $275,000. The other holiday was the day after Thanksgiving for 10-month employees. And again, they're separated out because there's a distinction in calendars there and who would qualify for that. So that added a significant amount to the cost of the package. I did remove, just like I did in our estimated costs, I removed the bilingual stipend impact from this and hopes to make a little bit more room for those other priorities. But even at that, when we combine everything here, the estimated value of the offer actually increased from the counter offer one. So just wanted to put that information here for you guys. Is there any questions around this table or clarification you want to offer me or calculations wise? Maybe need some time with it. And you guys know I'm available to go over this in a smaller group setting if that's required. So we'll go ahead and move towards what we're all waiting for today. We have HSD offer 3. And again, we have some highlights here that are movement from the original offer. So we have the wage study adjustment, that is a shared value that would benefit all membership and the district. And we agree that we would like to move that up into the first 2 years. The wage step advancement, again, the ticket on that is it's challenging, and we just aren't in a position to commit to any change there at this time. We do have the general salary increase. Again, it's highlighted here. Oh, and Brian Hungerford asked me to highlight it in a different color. It's movement from the original offer, but it's not an increase from offer 2. So we're still sitting at 2.5% there. For a combined for members that do receive the step, that's 5.5% increase. And then they may or may not qualify for that wage study adjustment as well. It depends. That is driven by the position they hold as identified in the study. Our longevity bonus for top step, that structure hasn't changed from our last offer, but it's still an increase over our initial offer. So it's highlighted in yellow. And you can see here that all of those other highlights are places that we've met. On Article 13, the holidays, that's the value of work for the 12-month employees to have Juneteenth. If that's what the one holiday that we're agreeing to at this time. We have our insurance opt-out again. There's a movement towards the initial offer, but it hasn't changed. The only thing that really changed here for us was the wage study adjustment and moving that forward, and then adding the Juneteenth holiday for 12-month employees. So we did make a little bit of movement. The estimated value of the offer increased about $140,000. And that's what we brought back today. So if you want to advance.
Hey, could I have a quick question? So you guys have already given your 12-month employees Juneteenth, right? Didn't that happen last summer?
We're acknowledging it as part of the federal and state implementation of Juneteenth, but they have both times for last year and this year, it has fallen on a weekend. So it's outside of the regular work calendar. So at this time, we didn't make any changes to that. This year in 2023, it will fall on a Monday.
Hey, I have a question for Michelle. Did you cost out the wage steps at the 4.2%? What is that?
Yeah, I did. Hold on just a second.
Okay, no, that's no problem. That's okay.
I didn't include that there.
Debbie, are you talking about the change from a 3% step to a 4.2% step?
Yes.
Michelle, I thought that was the piece that you said you hadn't costed out.
Well, I think there's two different ways to approach it.
Oh, okay.
And the lower ticket way was how I approached it, just in general, increasing the schedule across the board by 1.2%. And by doing that, it's right at $1 million. It increases a little bit each year, but we were discussing earlier as a team the impact of that cumulative 1.2 across the schedule for someone who's sitting at the end of it. And that is actually quite a bit more than that. So I think if it's something that the district is going to entertain, that we would take it back and look at it from that perspective where everyone is placed. For a more accurate estimate, but I think that's going to drive the cost up considerably. And I just don't see that being a direction that we're going to be able to move at this time.
And I think, for example, if you look at our nine-step salary schedule, if you change the steps from 3% steps to 4.2, that's step 9 wage rate goes up by 9%. So it's a 9% increase for anybody who's sitting at the top of the salary schedule, just changing that step from 3% to 4.2%. So it's not quite as simple as just saying it's a overall a 1.2% increase to the schedule. It just depends on what step you're at, how much accumulative effect that's had up to that point. So for step 8, it'd be slightly less, step 7, slightly less, et cetera. But for that top step, if you factor that 4.2% per step in all the way through, you end up with an amount that's 9% higher than what it currently is for top step.
Well, I have a question though. Can you tell me what the justification is that on license that you find value in them getting a 4.2% between the steps, but you don't find that same value for the classifieds between those steps?
I think they're two totally different salary schedules and built on two different models. There's a different number of steps. There's columns on the licensed salary schedule that are based on years of, so if you've got years of experience, you've also got an education factor in there. So I see them as two completely different types of salary schedules. And then you compare that to administrator, for example, like Michelle, what's the construct of the administrator salary schedule? Do you know off the top of your head?
Fewer steps. So there's only 4 and I want to say 5, depending on the position, but they have a 3% increment too. And they work backwards from a control point. So there's a top level, and then it's reduced by 3% all the way, down to a beginning administrator in that role. And so they have many fewer steps, but they're still set at the same amount as are classified, because it's compounds with, the general salary increase. So
the other thing with the licensed salary schedule, if you look at the beginning wage compared to the top wage, it's roughly a 2-to-1. So the entry level wage on that teacher salary schedule is approximately half of what the maximum wage is. So you have to have larger steps and more of them to get up to that point. So your salary schedule is different in that step 9 as compared to step 1, for example, is not a 2-to-1 type of a ratio. So it's just, for me, they're just constructed in 2 different ways. And again, the administrator one, fewer steps, also a 3% increment. So that salary schedule also constructed in a different way.
Right. Well, 3% for like a $30,000 check is a lot less than 3% for, $160,000. So, our people look at it as like, you're not showing the same value, in our step advancement. And that's just, that's part of the problem.
The one thing that is special and different about the classified membership is that the number of positions is so varied. So you have a maintenance 1, you have a maintenance 2, you have they will typically accelerate by changing positions over time. That's another opportunity for growth that teachers don't have. So I can see Brian's perspective from looking at various schedules for various groups, that there are advantages and disadvantages to each one of them. And classified has a far more varied range of positions to offer membership than licensed.
Is there any idea historically, like have the teachers always had like 4.2%, or is that something that got, just in an effort to explain the differences to our members, like when that happened and how it was, or how or why it was administered that way?
I'd have to go back and look at the history of that schedule. I think at one point it was a greater number of steps. It takes the teachers, I don't remember off the top of my head, Michelle, like 15 years to get to the top rate of pay. It takes your group 9 years to get to the top rate of pay. So if I'm a teacher, it takes me longer years of experience with the district, or I'm bringing in years of experience, it takes me longer to get to that top wage rate. I think it even used to be more, and over time we've cut steps off of that salary schedule. If I am remembering correctly, there's been times where we chopped off that bottom, the lowest paying step. And so that would increase, again, the percentage between steps as well when you lop off steps, typically, because it takes shorter number of years to get to the top. And so it may have changed it that way. So I don't know. I'm just thinking back to the salary schedule I inherited and bargained, that perhaps it had more steps at one point. But again, that to me is a significant difference between the schedules as well. It takes longer to get to that top end for license, because they start at approximately half the wage rate.
I should have included a sample schedule from the license so that we can look at it a little bit more closely, and I can make that available to you guys. They also, as their education level makes a big difference to them, because if they don't get past their bachelor's or whatever, they top out fairly soon and their level of steps. So that step increment of 4.2 comes much sooner to someone who doesn't advance their education than if they are advancing across the schedule. So it is definitely a different structure. It's limited in completely different ways as well.
Michelle, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I apologize, I didn't get to see ahead of time. So you may not know if this is too much of a surprise. You can just say, I'll look it up and get back to you. So January 19th, we're not done. We probably won't be done February, whatever. So all of year one, just for my own reminder, is for time that's already passed, and we're gonna have to make that up in one lump sum. And it's a budget that's already been passed by the budget committee and by the board. I'm guessing we allocated some at the outset of the budget cycle, and in the budget we approved some funding to cover this. What we expect or hope for in our offer is what I see on the screen here, offer number 3. Is that more or less, can you tell or even tell, is that more or less than what we allocated for this at the outset of the budget cycle?
It is, but I also added in some.
Well, is it more or is it less? Is it?
So it's more than what we initially allocated during the budget cycle. However,
Okay.
I've taken a look at our savings this year due to those
all
hard to fill positions. And so for year one, I was able to actually increase the amount of contingency that we had set aside by almost $400,000. So that's not available in year 2 or year 3 because we want to be
Right.
fully staffed, right? That's the dream. But
what we see here is more than we allocated, but you feel like we can afford it based on the budget we already approved with savings from other places. Is that
Correct.
about right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Crickets. I'm happy to explore this further with the executive group or both teams or either team at a later time as well. If you have more questions or if you want to examine other salary schedules for other groups, happy to go through that process. Let's go ahead and advance. We have the HSD proposed longevity bonus examples, and this information, as we started to cost that out, there are some nuances to the longevity bonus. And this is a repeat slide from last time because that didn't change for us, but we wanted to make sure that we're acknowledging the 20 years or more will receive the maximum longevity bonus for in year 2. So that would be 22, 23. And then in year 3, it would switch back just to those milestone years. It wouldn't be for every year in between, but it would just be those milestones that folks would enjoy an extra bonus for longevity with the district. I would just want to take a second here to talk about kind of the ask around the percentage of longevity that was on the HCU counter offers. And if you could go back to slide 2 for me. No, not slide 2. I'm sorry, 7. Offer 2. Correct. And so as we are, again, kind of working through the details and implementation of a percentage longevity, the challenge, well, Debbie actually stated one of the challenges earlier, and that's a 4.2 stipend looks different for somebody that makes a higher hourly wage or annual wage than someone who makes less. So there's always going to be questions around how that works. But the challenge that we would see in an implementation of that is that we would have to wait until the end of the year to make that calculation so that it's based on their annual pay. So someone who's at that 10-year mark, they wouldn't receive the bonus until the end of that 10th year, so that we could calculate by a percentage what the amount should be. We can't do that in advance. They have to complete the year. So that's one implementation advantage of having a set amount, is that we can do it, boom, right as people come into the year. It could be spread out over each paycheck, however they, I think that would need to be determined so that people can't decide one way or another and we can just implement it across the board. But I just wanted to share with you guys, because I don't think that that's the impact that you were necessarily wanting to have when we're looking at a percentage basis. Perhaps you were hoping for a higher amount than what we countered with, but the percentage approach makes that one really challenging. Okay.
I don't know if I 100% understand that, Michelle. So you're saying it would need to, because certainly the 4.2% would have a bigger impact on people's salaries than a flat
Correct.
dollar amount, especially like one time.
Correct. But it's the percentage approach to it that's the challenge, right? I mean, of course, the amount is as well, but for us to accurately calculate 4.2% of what somebody made in order to decide on the bonus amount, we would have to wait until the end of the year to do that and to pay it out. And maybe that's not an issue. You know, maybe it's just finding that longevity step at a percentage that the district can afford. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's an implementation challenge that maybe, you know, isn't foreseen by the bargaining team, you know, to know that they would have to wait till the end of the year to receive that. Okay. All right, Hannah, can you take us to slide 10 and our next steps? This is just my finish up slide, kind of an adjusted timeline on next steps for us. I put in here our regular board meetings and work sessions, and also our bargaining sessions. So just a timeline to make sure everybody is aware of what would need to happen before members would be impacted by a settlement. So it has to be ratified by HCU and then by the board in order for us to implement. And that information has to be the payroll by the 5th for regular pay and the 1st for retro pay. So I know that my team is already like practicing so that they'll be ready to go once we settle on a final package. But we definitely need some time to make that work.
And Michelle, if memory serves, unless something unusual would happen, traditionally, the board would only ratify at a regular session and not at a work session. So the opportunities would be January 25th, February 22nd, and March 5th. Those are the upper. Is that right? Like this is like a regular session kind of thing downstairs in the big room, everybody voting, right?
Yeah. Or it would have to be an item that was, you know, advertised on the agenda. Sometimes they do.
Yeah, we've taken
exceptions,
action in
but
work sessions, but it's kind of rare. It's not something we try to do. Like regular, unless there's some outstanding circumstance, we try to handle action items in regular sessions, I think.
right. The community would expect action items to be during regular session as well.
Right. So those would be the upcoming opportunities, or January 25th, which I've just set the agenda for that in the meeting that made me miss the beginning, but of this afternoon. So it's not happening there. So February 22nd and March. Okay. Oh, we just have one March meeting because of spring break. Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure what goes, you know, if it goes after that, but you know, I do know that we're not going to rush just to appease getting this done. We want it done right and we want it done fair. So I'm just throwing that out there. You know, we owe that to our membership and they're expecting, you know, that from us. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be done here, right? Like it goes retroactive all the way to the beginning, no matter when we get it.
Right.
Like we get it done
Exactly.
in June or whatever. I guess Michelle,
right,
from my experience before, or Kana, there's like some number of days rule where we got to get exception from. Are we like in danger of hitting any of that? Like we've been doing this so long that we have to get, it's like 150 days or 300 days or some number that we're allowed to do it without having to ask permission for the state to go longer.
No, it would almost just be the reverse. If once you hit 150 days, either party could call for mediation at that point, but you don't have to. You can keep bargaining beyond that point.
So if we're still making good progress, we don't have to do anything
correct
extraordinary. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, as long as we're making progress, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times I've bargained for probably a calendar year and neither party called for mediation because things were still kind of, you know, chugging forward. So it's once you hit 150 days, you have options, but you don't have to go that route.
All right.
That's all I have today. Everybody, thank you very much again for your time, and reach out if you have questions or want more information.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for the questions today. We are getting down to our last few minutes here, and it looks like our next time that we're meeting is February 2nd. And we are looking at a 4 to 8 p.m. virtual time. So
some of our, sorry, Connor.
go ahead.
We spoke with our board, our team, and Debbie, do you want to take it or do you want me to continue?
Oh, go ahead and continue. It's fine.
We have some of our team members that have small children and they have family commitments, so they can't meet in the evening. So.
Okay, so are we going to keep, right now we have on our, I think our calendars 8:30 to 11 or something like that. And part of that is, I know Hungerford has webinars that he has to do on Wednesdays, usually the first Wednesday of the month. So.
Well, 10 to 2 works for most, I think 10 to 2 works. And the 8:30 to whenever,
11.
So whatever works, but I just know after we spoke to our team, those that have small children or have family commitments or other commitments after work.
Understand.
The variety.
I think we had thought about an evening to try to accommodate people's schedule in the building and family and all that kind of stuff. So if that's not, if that doesn't work, you know, we just go back to whatever.
Right. Well, we were, yes, you're right, Mark. We were looking at the evening for the viewing and subs, the lack of subs for those of us that need subs, and coverage in the building for the administrators, the principals in here. But we didn't know about the family commitments and other obligations when we talked last time. So.
Yeah, and another date, I think we're good for the 16th of February, but March 9th would be a date that we would need to adjust because some members of our team aren't available on that day. So we'd like to look forward and see if there's a different time and date that we can meet that week.
So February 16th is good.
Mm-hmm. March, if we could adjust March 9th date.
So for February 2nd, we're talking about going back. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, do you want to adjust time or day?
Adjust day.
Okay.
And February 2nd, we're talking about adjusting time. Keeping the day.
February 2nd will be 8:30 to 11, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on our
instead of
calendar.
the evening. It'll be in the morning. It'll be virtual. We're going to continue to be virtual. February 2nd. So February 2nd is morning and virtual. Is that
I
about right?
believe so. Our team is good virtual.
I think it makes the most sense, at least for now.
Unless there's a change in numbers or, outbreaks. So what do we want to do for March? What day looks good? Do we want to keep it on Wednesday, but move it to like this, March 16th?
I'm good on any of the Wednesdays. I think the 23rd is spring break. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't be here. March 16th is the next Wednesday.
That works for me.
Yeah, why don't we move it to that date? Because I was just kind of looking earlier in that week. I have bargaining on Tuesday. So March 16th, if we could adjust that, Hannah.
So 10 to 2 as well. But we had 8:30 till 11, so.
10 to 2 for me is fine on that day.
Yeah,
Which
March
time frame?
16th would be 10 to 2.
10 to 2, okay.
Yeah, and I have it on my calendar already. So we're talking about skipping the 2nd, is that right?
No, we're going to February 2nd, we're going to keep February 16th, and we're going to adjust and move March 9th to
Okay.
16th.
Gotcha.
And do we want to leave it at that then, or go on further?
think that's probably good for now.
Why don't we, when we get together, like next time, we can,
Okay.
need to start planning out.
There
And-
is one scheduled March 30th still.
Okay,
If
And
we're going to
March
meet
30th.
on March 16th, though, I would propose that we move March 30th because we do have spring break. And that's going to be very difficult for our team to get together. We'd have to get together on like the 28th or the 29th, so we can look at it then. So let's leave it and we'll look and we'll let you know.
Wait, that's the week of spring break?
No, March 23rd is the week of spring
Okay.
break. March 30th is the week after spring break.
Okay, okay, all right.
yeah, I
But
think the
with,
thing,
but with break,
that-
nobody be getting together, right, to chat over stuff, right?
No. I'm going out of town, so.
Yeah, I'm heading out of town as well.
yeah, I'd like to propose if we can stay virtual, I think it helps our schools as well, just because getting feedback from not only our bargaining team, but others, that there's a value add to being able to respond to things and step back in and out at their building sites. Just because they're, when there's us that are out, and then there are others that are out as well. And so, as you know, we're using our admin, our super tech, our classified staff at the admin and licensed folks to go out and support in schools in whatever ways needed. All right, so we'll go ahead and plan to meet on February 2nd from 8:30 to 11, and we will go ahead and we'll plan to bring forward responses in regards to verifying the MOUs and then following up on Article 24. And then I think we can go ahead and I'm assuming we would do a virtual electronic TA for the other two articles.
Okay, that sounds good. Hannah, I'll be in contact with you on what articles we'll be ready with. So,
On top of financials.
right, on top of that.
All right, anything else for the good of the order?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Have a good rest of your
Alright,
week,
thank you.
guys.
You guys too.
And
Thank
Tucker,
you.